Hello, and welcome to Agents of Nonprofit. My name is Alexander Lapa, and I'm here to talk to everyday superheroes helping nonprofits using technology. Today, I'm joined by guest Eric Dreshfield. Eric, welcome to the show.
Hi, Alex. Thanks for having me on today. I appreciate it.
So, Eric, you have a tremendous number of titles in your LinkedIn profile. My question to you is, how do you introduce yourself to strangers?
That is an interesting question. Generally, I start off by saying, "Hi, I'm Eric," uh, and kind of go from there. Probably the things that I usually point out are that, and I start generally with where I am today in my career. So I usually talk about being the product evangelist at Mogli, and then from there I go to the community aspect of a lot of the things that I do, which centers around being the group leader for the Evansville, Indiana Salesforce community group, and being the founder of Midwest Dreamin.
And if someone asks you, what does that all mean? Like, what is the glue that keeps all these organizations and all these activities together?
Oh, wow. I guess I guess in a sense that's me and my passion for people and wanting to help connect people who have questions to the people who have the answers to their questions.
You wrote, and I read that on LinkedIn, that you consider yourself to be a connector, kind of like the Kevin Bacon of Salesforce. I thought that was really clever. It's a great reference because I remember, was it in the 90s, I guess, the idea of Kevin Bacon was every major celebrity had about 3 connections before they got to Kevin Bacon. What was that?
Something like that. Yeah. Yep. That got started purely by accident. It wasn't something I thought of on my own. I was actually standing in line for a session at Dreamforce 2014, just chatting with a friend of mine, waiting to get in the room. And she said, Eric, every time I have a question about something very specific in Salesforce and I don't know the answer, she said, I always turn to you. And she said, either you know the answer or you know someone that knows the answer. And then she said, it's like you're Kevin Bacon in the Salesforce world. And my mind just grabbed a hold of that and thought, you know what, there's a blog post or 10 there. There's something going on with that. And so I grabbed a hold of the title and just started calling myself the Kevin Bacon of the Salesforce ecosystem. For about 2 years after that point, I wrote a blog post every week, roughly, on my personal blog site where I simply did nothing more than introduced a member of the Salesforce community to the community. And I did it through a series of 5 or 6 standard questions. What's your name? What company do you work for? What's your job title? What do you actually do on the job? Because job titles don't always match what you really do. And then, of course, the bacon connection. I said bacon or sausage or neither. Just to see what kind of reaction I get from people. And then I had one more question that was really something along the lines of, tell me something that would surprise us about you. Something that not many people know about who you are or some of the things you enjoy doing. Now, that one was pretty interesting. I got responses about mountain climbing and skydiving and all sorts of interesting sports and interesting activities that people were doing.
That's a great way to introduce the community to the community, like you said, which is kind of like what I'm doing here with this podcast, is introducing various players in the nonprofit and nonprofit adjacent space to technologies and products and people that nonprofits can benefit from. So it's kind of the same lines.
Yeah.
And then, so when you say connector, so I imagine you must have like thousands of connections on LinkedIn then and in the ecosystem of Salesforce.
Yeah, LinkedIn versus Twitter. I'm actually way stronger on the connections on Twitter. I think I'm around 18,000 followers on Twitter and about close to 9,000 connections probably on LinkedIn right now.
Wow.
And the vast majority of those are all Salesforce related. I mean, I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem since 2009 and actually started my Twitter account in 2012. So that's that. I purely started that one for listening purposes to hear conversations around Salesforce and see what people were talking about to try to learn more about the platform.
What made you get interested in Salesforce?
That was an interesting transition. I was literally at the right place at the right time, and someone saw something in my history that thought would be a good fit for a position. I was working at a software company as a temporary call center agent, providing tech support to their clients. And it was originally supposed to be an 8-week job. They were rolling out one new piece of software. And this was long enough ago that rolling out a new piece of software meant mailing a CD to the clients. They'd stick it in the drive, follow the directions, and call tech support when they had problems. And I was the person on the end of the phone for that new package. And after being on this temporary job that was supposed to just be 8 weeks long, I was there for about 6 months. The HR department finally calls me one day and says, we finally have approval and funding for a full-time position in the call center. It's doing exactly what you're doing today, but as a company employee, there's more money, there's benefits. Are you interested? And of course, at that point, I was really looking for a full-time job, a real position, if you want to call it that. And if so, my response was pretty clear, cut and dry. Yeah, what's next? I'm interested. And their response back was, well, there's an interview process for this role. It's like, okay, I interviewed for the job once and I got it. I've been there. I've proven myself. I can interview for it again and succeed, I'm sure. I wasn't too worried about it. And then I get on the phone with their vice president, who's over the call center, and a whole bunch of other technology related aspects of the company. And she says to me, Eric, I understand why you're still here. I know why we've kept you this long as a temporary employee. You do a great job for our clients. You solve their problems quickly, and everybody's happy with the work you do. So fantastic. And she says, I reviewed your skills and your previous positions and everything you've got on your resume about what life was like for you and your prior jobs. And she says to me, I just have one question I want to ask you. And for me, that was a moment of panic. I'm thinking a one-question job interview. This is going to be one heck of a question. Probably the imposter syndrome piece of my mind probably thought, I should just hang up the phone right now and walk away and start looking for a new job. But I listened to the question. And what she asked me was, she said, why are we wasting your time and ours having you support our clients and customers when there's so many other things you can do to help this company move forward?
Oh, wow.
Fantastic question, right? It's amazing. I had no answer for her. I said, well, the only position you have available right now is this call center agent job. And her response to me was, that's true today, but give me 3 weeks. I'm working on approval for a business analyst role to help us launch Salesforce to the call center you're now working in. And I think you'd be perfect for that job. And that was the first time I had ever heard of Salesforce, was when she used those words in that conversation right there. And my reaction to her saying that was, what's Salesforce? I've never heard of it. And 3 weeks later, I'm a BA rolling out Salesforce for this international software company, this technology company, with no prior experience in Salesforce. I was learning the Service Cloud as I was helping the company figure out how to properly implement it and make sure everything was configured properly and all that stuff. All the things you do when you implement Salesforce somewhere. And that was how I got my start. And she just saw something and said, this guy knows what he's doing. I need him.
And back then, they didn't have Trailhead, those self-served type of training.
Yeah.
You had to attend either courses in person or what else? What other choices were there at the time?
Google the help and training within Salesforce, and the attend training in person. That was one of the things she told me pretty early on, like on day 1 or day 2 of actually being on that role, was, I'm sorry, I don't have the budget to send you to training. And she suggested I find a local user group to start attending meetings and learn about Salesforce from people already using it, ask them questions about how they did things, what they did, how they overcame challenges. And that launched me on this whole journey over the next probably 6 to 8 months of driving to a user group meeting anywhere I could find one, at least once a month. And there wasn't anything in Southwest Indiana where I live. Louisville, Kentucky had a group 3 hours away, St. Louis 3 hours away. The first one I ever went to was actually in Chicago, which was a 5.5 hour drive each way. So I spent a good portion of that first several months on the job, kind of touring the Midwest, if you will, attending user group meetings. I learned a ton, made a whole bunch of connections, met a lot of great people, and ultimately came back from all of that and thought, this is kind of stupid, me doing all this driving around and to meet all these people. I mean, not really, but I thought to myself, I can't be the only person here in Southern Indiana using Salesforce. So I wonder what it takes to start a user group here in Southern Indiana. So I reached out to somebody at Salesforce and said that. I basically asked them, how can I get a group started in my area? Because I really need one. And their response back to me was, congratulations, thanks for volunteering to be a user group leader. And I kind of laughed at them. And if you could see my fingers like almost touching each other, I said, I know this much about Salesforce, that very minute space between the two fingers literally touching each other. And I need to know everything when I'm kind of outstretching my arms and saying I need all this other stuff. And I said, I'm the wrong person to lead a group because I don't know anything. A few conversations later, and over the course of about 3 weeks, they convinced me that I'm probably really the right person for that role because I'm so curious and hungry for the knowledge. So about a month and a half later, I launched the Evansville, Indiana Salesforce user group, and I've been leading it ever since. So in 2010, launched that group, and I'm still running it today. Of course, we switched to the virtual model when COVID got ugly. We haven't gone back to in person yet, but had 5 people show up for that very first meeting. Those 5 people still come to the meetings most every time, along with anywhere between, 10 to 30 or 40 people, and not just from the Evansville area now that we've gone virtual. It's from anywhere.
Is that what evolved into this Midwest Dreaming conference that you now have, or is that something that's separate?
It was a similar experience and a similar dare I call it, almost selfish reaction to something. One of the other things my new boss said on this very first role I had in Salesforce when I learned about Dreamforce was, yeah, it's a great conference. I'd love to send you, but I don't have the budget. Our administrator needs to go. Our developer needs to go. Senior management needs to go. My function was, other than helping them launch Service Cloud, was a reporting analyst. So I was the numbers guy, building all the reports and dashboards that helped everybody else understand the business. She said, I'd love for you to go, but we can't afford it. And she said, you're welcome to attend on your own, but I can't cover your expenses. And that was expensive. I mean, a week in San Francisco, even 12 years ago, was pretty expensive, I thought, compared to today. I'm sure it's like chump change by now. But my mind did this strange little reaction to that and said, well, if I can't go to Dreamforce, let's bring Dreamforce to me. And that was the whole idea behind how Midwest Dreamin got started, was I wanted to experience a Dreamforce-like conference. So I started doing some research, watched some Dreamforce sessions online. I actually talked to a few other people who had organized I think what they called a super user group meeting in the Florida area a couple of years earlier. A couple Salesforce MVPs, Joshua Hoskins, Jackie Trevieso, and a now Salesforce employee, Jennifer Phillips. They organized this thing they called Dreamforce to You Florida. And I think that was held in like 2008, 2009, maybe 2010. And I heard about that somewhere and started asking them questions about what's it take to run an event like that? What do you need? Tell me all your knowledge, dump everything you know about how to do this thing on me. And after learning all of that and figuring out it was going to be a ton of work, I still decided I wanted to do it. And so I created this event out of nothing, found a hotel that was willing to work with me on securing space for a conference where I was expecting 75 to 150 people that first year. And this hotel was willing to let me advertise that we were holding it there on very specific dates without me giving them any money up front, because I had no money from sponsors. I didn't have any extra cash because I had just come off of a relatively long period of what I call underemployment, about 2 years or 2.5 years of making probably 20% of what I was making prior to that until I got into the Salesforce ecosystem. And that's how Midwest Dreamin really got started. I managed to find some sponsors with some partner companies, some ISVs and SI partners of Salesforce, and started advertising the event through the user group leader channels. And had about 100 people show up for that full day of conference in Louisville, Kentucky.
So how would you compare it to Dreamforce? And just to make sure my listeners are aware, Dreamforce, for those that don't know, is a yearly event that Salesforce has in San Francisco. It's about a week long, and it's a great opportunity to meet the rest of the people in the community, to learn about new products, to connect with existing vendors or new vendors, and just share the love and be part and feel part of a community of Salesforce. So how would you compare that, basically what you're offering in the Midwest Dreaming, to Salesforce, or to Dreamforce rather?
The Dreamin events, as most people tend to call them now, the community-led conferences. There's dozens of them now scattered all around the world. In the years leading right up to COVID, there were probably 35 or 40 all across the world. And they're starting to come back again around the country and around the world. I think the biggest difference really between one of those community-led conferences, and Dreamforce is who organizes and runs them and what the focus of the content is. Dreamforce, as you said, is organized and run by Salesforce, so they drive the content. They present the marketing information that they want people to hear. They get customers involved. They select the stories that they want to have told there based on what customers and partners submit. So Salesforce really guides the story that's being told at Dreamforce. At these community conferences, they all kind of operate under the same umbrella of thought process, where we're going to let the community decide what to present at these events. We all of us conferences, Midwest and all the other ones, we open up a call for speakers. We say to the community at large, come tell us what you want to talk about at our conference. Submit your session ideas. And then as the organizing committees of these conferences, we get together and look at the sessions that were submitted and make a decision on those. Most of the conferences, when the committee that's selecting the sessions are evaluating them, all they see is the session title and the description. So they don't have any of the information about who the speaker is, what makes them qualified to speak at a conference, whether they're male, female, non-binary, whether they're an MVP or just an average Salesforce customer. We don't know any of that as we're evaluating the sessions. So we base the decisions solely on the title and the description. Is it engaging? Is it well thought out? Does it make sense? Are there clear-cut takeaways that a person attending the session is going to have and understand? And we, at least the way Midwest does it, we all rank the sessions, we all vote on them, we give them a 0 to 5, and the highest scores win. Democratic, I suppose you could say, in a way.
Definitely, and I like that approach because it makes it more anonymous, more level set. Like you said, it's really the community driving it versus more of an agenda by Salesforce.
Yeah, it wasn't that way when the first couple of years for Midwest Dreamin. The first year it was simply me. The second year Midwest Dreamin happened, I had a committee helping me, but we kind of gave preference to MVPs, as we assumed MVPs were widely known in the ecosystem and were good speakers and would know their content. So if you were an MVP and you submitted a session, you were pretty much guaranteed to get in. A person who is no longer at Salesforce, used to be a developer evangelist, I think, for them, Mary Scotton. Once in the 2014-ish timeframe, Mary asked me how we decided on these sessions. And I explained to her, we look at all the sessions, we look at the qualifications of everybody, and we make a call. And she said, what do you think is going to happen if you eliminate the personally identifying information off of the sessions and just base it on the content? And I said, well, great question. Mary said, what you're going to see, I think, is more diversity in your speakers. You're going to give women and minorities a bigger opportunity to speak up at the conferences. You may not get as many Salesforce MVPs who were speaking the previous year. And overall, your content quality is probably going to increase. Why don't you give it a try? Do it blindly, as she put it. So that's when we started that process of only looking at the title and the description. And she was right. I mean, from surveys we did from after the events, the total average scores that the breakout sessions were getting increased pretty significantly from one year to the next when we went to that methodology of choosing sessions.
Yeah, that's great. For those that don't know, what is an Salesforce MVP and how do you become one?
So MVP, I think in this particular case, kind of stands for most valuable professional. Salesforce has a whole page or two on their website where they explain what they may think a Salesforce MVP is. In general, I think an MVP is someone who is easily accessible to answer people's questions, widely regarded as an expert in one particular area or multiple areas of Salesforce, or certainly well versed in what Salesforce is all about generically, and just very passionate about the community aspect of what Salesforce has to offer. So the qualifications can vary, certainly. There are some MVPs who have all the certifications out there that are possible to gain. There are others like myself who actually hold 0 certifications, but I've been an MVP or in the MVP Hall of Fame since 2013. So my passion for the community and organizing these events, I think, is probably what ultimately got me into the MVP world. But how to become an MVP, that's a question that we MVPs get asked a lot. And I don't think there's a real answer to that question. And I don't think there's a clear-cut path that you can follow to get there. Most of us will probably say something along the lines of, don't try to be an MVP, just be one. Just be yourself, share knowledge, help other people, and you're going to get noticed. At some point in time, somebody's going to think this guy's doing good work. He's really helping a lot of people, even if it's not your job. I mean, some people do that because it's part of their job. Other people do it because they're passionate about helping other people. They want to see others succeed. They want new people in this ecosystem to get a strong foothold and gain a great career, and that's just part of who they are as an individual. So I think it was Gary Palmentier, one of the very long time Salesforce MVPs. He might have been in the original very first class of the MVPs even. I think he's the one who actually said, don't try to be an MVP, just be one, when somebody asked him that question. So there's not a secret sauce, I don't think, by any stretch.
Going back then to Midwest Dreaming, because I noticed you have a few conferences, a few breakout sessions, and there are some that are specific for nonprofits. What can a nonprofit expect to benefit from by going to this conference? Because I know it's coming up actually in a couple of weeks, July 20th to 22nd.
Right, that's correct. Yeah, I think the biggest benefit for nonprofits, well, and for most anybody really, is beyond the community aspect of being able to have the conversations with people one-on-one, face-to-face, in group settings, however you want to do it. I think the aspect of learning is the biggest takeaway. And learning from people who have probably gone through exactly the struggles you're currently facing. If you're new to a nonprofit, or if you've just started implementing Salesforce, the people who are there that are going to be speaking on their particular topics have been through it. They've done it for years, more than likely, or they've at least done it once, perhaps in some cases. But they've gone through very similar challenges to what you're facing, and they've built a solution. They've overcome some obstacles and some challenges that you may be facing, and they're willing to share that information by presenting their session on, here's what we did, here's how we got to where we are today. And then you can certainly approach them very easily right after the session and say, hey, can we have a longer conversation? Maybe not today because we're at the conference, but let's hook up afterwards, and I've got a few more questions I want to ask you, that type of thing. And I don't think I've ever seen any of our speakers turn down an opportunity to talk to anybody about their particular topic, or even in the Salesforce ecosystem in general.
I've also noticed in the nonprofit space that people are really willing to share their success stories and their failures as well, so that other people can learn from it. It goes beyond, of course, not just nonprofits, but I've noticed it more often than not in the nonprofit space. And having this kind of conference, this kind of venue to be able to share this information, it's extremely valuable.
Yep, I think so.
Shifting to then another company, you have this, I am going to pronounce it incorrectly, Mogli. Is that how you pronounce it?
That's correct, Mogli.
So what does Mogli do? What is the purpose of Mogli?
Yeah, so Mogli is a Salesforce partner. We have an app on the App Exchange called Mogli SMS, and that is a native to Salesforce text messaging app. And what that really does is it enables our customers to have better conversations with their own customers. And what's that really mean? It can be conversations around all sorts of things. From a nonprofit perspective, donor engagement, you can do through text messaging to have a good conversation around a session that you're holding, a training that you want to do. How you can perhaps gain more donors even into your organization to increase what you're able to do. The conversations that Mogli facilitates through the app inside Salesforce can be one-on-one conversations with a very specific person, or you can utilize bulk messaging and send out personalized messages based upon your Salesforce data, but driving the same message to hundreds or thousands of individuals at the same time. It's pretty simple to use. You don't have to be a Salesforce administrator to get it set up to utilize it on a day-to-day basis. Some of the features and functionality your administrator can control who within your organization has access to certain things, since we're native. And then, of course, the reporting aspect of everything that goes on behind that. Anything you can report on in Salesforce right now, you can report the same types of things utilizing the Mogli data that you capture.
So it's SMS and WhatsApp, or are there other channels as well?
We also can do multimedia, like small files. You can put images or PDF files through there as well. And then we have a feature that we call Mogli Voice, where instead of delivering a text message, you can deliver a recorded message. So you can have someone on your team record a message to say, "Hey, we've got this event coming up. Here's the details. It'd be great if you'd attend." Reply with a 1 to attend, a 2 to not attend. And people can text back to that vocalized message. You don't have to record that yourself, though. Mogli has technology built into the app as well, where you can upload that text into a specific location and then select a voice and an accent between one of about 5 or 6 different combinations, and Mogli will generate the voice for you. It's more robust, more human-like than the old-fashioned computerized monotone voices of the past, too.
I remember those. Those were good times. Stephen Hawking style of.
Yes, exactly.
That's so, and this is all, of course, to mobile phones. So that's more
Right.
catered toward a younger audience, because most kids are on phones these days. The engagement level must be pretty significant for that age range.
Yeah, it is. And really, overall, the engagement and response rates are pretty high compared to like email, where typical email campaigns may see anywhere between like 3 and 8 to maybe 15% at the high end from response rates. Text campaigns through Mogli tend to run in the 45 to 50% engagement rate, and sometimes even higher.
Wow.
I mean, if you think about the people you know, how many of them have a cell phone? The answer to that's probably almost every single one, right? From teenage years all the way up to grandparents. Practically everyone in this country has a cell phone, and more than likely they use a text messaging app or service every single day. And I think that's part of the reason why Mogli is so successful, is because everybody is used to text messaging now. Somebody once told me, I get text messages, but I have to open email. And it's almost like it's implying there's an added step into an email. You see a subject line, you see who it's from. Maybe you decide, I'm not interested, so I'm not even going to open it. The text message pops up on your phone. You get the little preview. You see the basics of what it is, and it's a simple click to go right into it and read the whole text. Mogli powers a lot of surveys for gathering data for intake of new clients or new customers for some of our people, some of our clients and customers. It's a text message conversation. What's your email? What's your name? Those kinds of things. And then if for some reason the conversation and the data that needs to be collected is way more involved than what you could get in 5 or 6 questions, which is about where we suggest the limit be on text conversations. We have partnerships with many of the form companies within the Salesforce ecosystem as well. So we can pre-populate a form based on the data we've already collected through this text conversation, and then send out a link to that form for the individuals to finish sending their data into this particular response.
Is the interaction always initiated from Salesforce, or is it someone can send a text message or an SMS message or a WhatsApp message to someone at Salesforce, like to someone using Salesforce, I should say, that they can respond to?
So they actually start all within the Salesforce org of the company having the conversations. Well, like technically, I guess I shouldn't say that. If you're at a conference, for example, and you're at a booth, you're working the booth, and you can put up a poster or a flyer at your booth that simply says text cloud to this particular phone number for more information about our product. When the person then grabs their phone and texts the word cloud, they're initiating the conversation. They're kind of implying consent to have this conversation with you. A lot of people may not know that texting is kind of bound by similar spam laws that email has. So from the perspective of us sending out text messages to clients, we have to get their permission first. Otherwise, we're considered spamming. So if we have the customers initiate the conversation first, that's implied consent. But what we normally suggest to our clients, and what we do on our own side usually as well, is that first response we send back is a thanks for your message. By continuing this conversation, you're agreeing to receiving X number of text messages from us a month, or you're agreeing to complete this text conversation in this form or whatever. So we're kind of getting a double opt-in, if you want to think about it that way, just to make sure everything's good, because the spam laws can get kind of tricky sometimes.
Yeah, both Canada and the US have very strict laws these days. And yeah, implied consent versus explicit, yeah, very tricky to navigate, but it's important to do.
Yep.
So I don't even know of any other competitors that in that space for SMSs that's connected to Salesforce through a native app.
There are a few competitors. We may be technically the only one that's really native. And I'd even rather not just mention the competitors.
No. Yeah, certainly, but it's just because it's more of a cutting edge type of technology in the sense of it's still relatively new. I think using phones as opposed to people's old mentality of using desktops and browsers. So that's great.
Yeah, and Mogli actually got its start in the nonprofit world, and the company's been around now for 11 years. We just celebrated our 11th birthday about 2 weeks ago, and the organization got its start because the founder of the company was working with a nonprofit called Nuru International, and their goal was to try to help rural Kenyan farmers have better crop production on their farms. And the reason they were trying to do that was to be able to figure out a way to inform these farmers of crop disease that their neighbors were experiencing, or potential weather hazards that might cause damage to the crops. And what our founder Stephen Simic built is this, as the original Mogli product, was a one-way messaging app that allowed Nuru International to push out text messages to these farmers. Now, like I said, they were living in really rural conditions, mud huts, very limited access to the internet, very limited electricity, but they had enough juice to power cell phones, and they carried these little flip phones around with them so they could get text messages. And that was how Mogli got its start, was just this one-way push of a message out to these farmers, trying to help them protect crops so they could end hunger in their local communities.
Wow. Is there a use case for nonprofits, for example, if a particular volunteer is out in the field doing work and the nonprofit wants to communicate with that volunteer? Is that one channel that could be used, or one method that could be used? Or is there
Yeah, that's absolutely one of the use cases that we see a lot of. Some of the others for nonprofits, I kind of touched on it a little bit, like the intake process of nonprofits sometimes hold events or hold meetings to share information, setting up the meeting, letting people know about a meeting, and even going so far as inviting people to attend this meeting and getting their confirmation through this meeting, and putting them onto a registration list. That's all things that can be done through the Mogli app and through text messaging. Because the data is native to Salesforce, once you collect that information, you can have automations run within Salesforce, flows, if you will, to process that data and follow that individual through a journey and put them onto a path of certain things based upon their responses to the questions. And one other thing I want to point out really quickly, Mogli is not just a name for the company. It's actually an acronym based upon how the company got started. It stands for Mobile Global Impact. Pretty fascinating, I think.
I like it. I like when there's a clever reason for the name. I was also curious to know, I think I read it, do you accept payments through the app as well?
We do have a product that we call Mogli Pay, which is effectively like a text-to-pay app. Where we're kind of in the process right now of re-engineering it and making it way better than it has been. So watch for some announcements and some new updates on that pretty soon.
Awesome. And then the third, I don't know, company or organization that you work with is something called Nebulabs. Can you explain what that is?
Sure. Yeah. Nebulabs is a new nonprofit that just got started in the Nashville area, probably a couple of months ago, I would guess. the founder of Nebulabs is a woman named Gloria Gordon, and what she's trying to do with Nebulabs is provide instruction and teaching to underserved students at the high school level to get them trained on the basics of cloud technology and Salesforce and how that can be used to solve business problems. Hoping that through the classes and through what Nebulab is going to teach these kids, once they get through high school, they'll have a Salesforce portfolio already built. They'll have a certification or two possibly under their belt already, and get them set up for a nice career in the Salesforce ecosystem.
And how do schools or students participate in the program?
So actually the 2022-23 year, the program's already full. She's got a couple of schools and a few partner companies in the Nashville area lined up to help with it. But if anyone's interested in pursuing that for our next school year, the easiest way would just be reach out to either myself or Gloria, and I'm sure you'll put links or emails out in the show notes or whatever for that. We can include Gloria as well. See, she's simply Gloria at Nebulabs, and that's nebulabs.org.
Yeah, we'll add show notes for all three for Midwest Dreamin because it is coming up in the near future. So we'll add links for that for Mogli and for Nebulabs as well.
Fantastic.
There seems to be a general train of thought across all these organizations about the community. And I noticed I get a sense from you that you're very strongly participating in a community, or if you want to feel connected to a community. What is it about that what is it about that draws you to it? How did you end up working with and being more involved with a community type of focus?
Yep. So as I kind of talked about in that describing my first role in Salesforce, where the manager told me go find a user group and meet people, that's kind of like starting that snowball rolling down the hill. The tiny snowball that starts at the top of the mountain, and as it picks up speed and gets bigger and bigger and bigger and just keeps rolling. I jokingly blame her for my community activity, for getting me started in all this stuff. But from that point forward, a lot of my knowledge and a lot of my network, and even I could probably even say every single position in the ecosystem I've had after that very first one came from the community. It came from people I knew. It came from companies I learned about through the ecosystem, through attending events or Dreamforce. It didn't really, I don't think any of my jobs that I've had since that very first one came from me finding a job listing for a specific position at a company, or even working through a recruiter and saying, hey, I'm looking for a new job. Can you help me? I think it was more connection based. So I kind of built my whole career around the community, and I thank the community for it in a sense by doing all these things to help others get to that same sweet spot for them.
I'm getting a very strong sense of karma from you.
Yep, I suppose you could say that. Yeah.
So where would you like to be in the next couple of years? If you were to fast forward, in 2-3 years from now, where would you like to be?
Yeah, that's a really awesome question. The role I have here at Mogli is amazing. It's another one of those jobs that the role was kind of created with me in mind. And well, literally this one they did. When I first started talking to them, it was about a totally different position. But after just a couple conversations, the whole conversation shifted around becoming a product and community evangelist for the company, taking advantage of my passions and my strengths all at the same time. I'm a little older than most people in this ecosystem, so part of me is thinking my next move is going to be retirement, but I don't really know what that looks like or when that's going to happen. I'm having too much fun to want to slow down right now. So I guess 3 to 5 years from now, I'd love to still be slinging the Moglis, as we like to call it, in shop talk inside Mogli, and still be involved with the community big time, and still watching Midwest Dreamin grow. 2019, the last time Midwest Dreamin happened, we had 900 people attend the event. We might get close to that this year, which I think for a first year back from COVID is really strong. When we canceled for 2020, we were on pace to be over 1,000 at Midwest Dreamin, which would have made it by far the largest community-led conference in the U.S. So I'd love to see it top 1,000 someday. From that perspective, it's exciting and scary both at the same time.
That would be great. I think it's a wonderful initiative. there's like I said earlier, there's a lot of value, I think, to going to these kinds of conferences. You learn so much in that short amount of time that it would take you, many times longer to learn on your own or going through Google.
Yep.
Listen, this has been great. Where can people find more about you online if they want to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter for sure at just Eric Dresh. So my first name, the first half of my last name. I'm on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only Eric Dreshfield out there on LinkedIn as well. Of course, I'm on the Salesforce community as well. LinkedIn and Twitter are my favorite social media platforms. So I spend more time on those probably than anywhere else. They can always reach directly out to me through email at eric.dreshfield@gmail.com. And if they have a Mogli specific question, my Mogli email is eric@mogli.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Alex. I appreciate you having me on today.
All right, folks, that's it for today. I'm Alexander Lapa, and I hope you join me again next time for Agents of Nonprofit.